Dala Nongwa Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Gek Darba Dan Tam Je Kembe Baridu Chopra Jeba Tam Je Gisa Jebe Ma Nongka Dan Nyambe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dang Den Tung Yao Dang De Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dabra Sobe Chanju Rinpo Je Dobra Ja Dala Dangwa Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Turba Dan Tam Je Gembe Bardu Jobra Jeba Tam Je Ge Se Jebe Ma Nangka Dang Nyampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dan Den Dunya Dan De Nudu Lana Mepa Yan Dabra Sobe Chanju Rinpo Je Tobra Ja Nala Tangwa Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ke Tarba Da Tam Je Gembe Bardu Jobra Jeba Tam Je Ge Se Jebe Manang Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dan Ten Tunyao Dan De Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dabra Sobe Chanju Rinpo Je Tobar Je de sang ma ge ki bardu lunga yisum ke wala ko ma shi bardu lunga yisum ke wala ko tu tring ne sun te ne ma chang ta sang ki bardu lunga yisum ke wala ko son je chodan so je jonam la chanju bardu dane gyabse je dage jinso gebe sonam ke drala penche sanje du prashu sanje chodan so ge jonam la chanju bardu dane gyabse je dage jinso gebe sonam ke drala penche sanje du prashu sanje chodan so ge jonam la chanju bardu dane gyabse je Dage jinso gebe sonam ke drola pencher sanje drupra shu manam kadang nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang dewe gindan dambra gyurji dungyao dang dungyao ji gyudang dewa gyurji dungyao mepe dewa dang me dewa juji niring chadang nidang dewa Tang Nyang La Nebra Gyu Je Ma Nang Kadang Nyam Pe Sen Chen Tam Je Dewa Dang Dewe Gyu Dan Dembra Gyu Je Du Nyao Dang Du Nyao Ji Gyu Dan Dewa Gyu Je Du Nyao Me Pe Dewa Dang Me Dewa Gyu Je Ni Ring Cha Dang Ni Dang Dewe Tang Nyang La Nebra Gyu Je Ma Nang Kadang Nyam Pe Sen Chen Tam Je Dewa Dang Dewe Gyudan Dembara Gyurji Du Nyao Dang Du Nyao Ji Gyudan Dewa Gyurji Du Nyao Me Pe Dewa Dang Me Dewa Gyurji Niring Cha Dang Ni Dang Dewe Tang Nyang La Nebra Gyurji. Please take a few moments to let body and mind settle, to settle comfortably, quietly, contentedly, right here, right now.
请大家稍作休息，然后让这个身心，然后可以沉淀下来，然后回归到安静、稳定、平静的一个状态。
This quality of contentment, if we put some effort to bring it to the foreground of our experience, can go a long way in assisting in being less distracted.
就是这个，我们 自我满足这样的一种特质，如果我们努力的让它可以浮现的话，其实是可以帮助我们，就是可以变得更加的不那么轻易的受干扰。
Most of the immediate energy related to distraction comes from habit. Yeah, habitually being distracted. That habit of distraction primarily arises because we are not contented. We think, we feel there's something more interesting, there's something better, there's some improvement that I can always do. As simple as my eyes thinking there's something more interesting to look at, just to that corner over there, or my skin feeling, oh, it's a little itchy, if only I scratch, down to all those kinds of not being contented.
就是所有这一切的干扰，其实是来自于我们的这个习气。而之所以会升起，是因为我们不满足，然后不断的觉得有更有趣、更新鲜、更好的事情。就简单的来说，其实就像我们的眼睛可能就会发现其他在角落的某个景象可能更吸引人，或者是我的身体就有一点痒，然后如果我能够去抓的话，那会更加的理想。
So now, instead of doing that, we bring out this quality of contentment that says, this is good enough.
那现在，与其我们这么做的话，那不如我们就好好的安住在当下，满足于当下，就是这一切就已经非常好了。
In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times before each of you, lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. By the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear. vividly in my mind with as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands. I prostrate to all you conquerors in each atom of Buddhas, numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way, with infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies. I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments and excellent parasols, our finest lamps and superior incense. I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances, and sandalwood powder heap high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged. I offer to you conquerors these vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors. With the power of conviction in noble deeds I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors all the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance. I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions, and the heirs of the Buddha solitary realizers here is still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings, you who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi, all you who are my protectors, please turn the unexhaled wheel of Dharma with palms together. I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana, please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings, whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, four continents, sun and moon, I hold in mind as the Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the three kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings with my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence. Please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment, whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching. I now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Devata Kinirana Mandala Pratitya Soha. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Ndurje chanjen tele naro dang mami dapo padu jidin kung kadun sudin sawe lame sha sa jula ma yidam chokyong lan so wa de so da ji jin ji lo ke brengi do me zam len gen drop e dun sun yong la gya zo me gya wa do je cha pa jidin kung bo sha la do de ta do sam gyo gyo le me jin ji lo shi tu je jin nen ge mon pa se ne kyang sem to de do to bra jin ji lo Hong Wajin Yajin Changsang Pema Geza Dompola Yasan Jogan Wandunya Pema June Sheshuda Kudu Kando Mampo Kurke Jesu Da Kejin Logi Shizu Guru Pema Sede Hong Men Jugi Yaki Budane Sanji Kunding Wani Ransen Jugun Wonsu Tonze Batsawe Lame Shabla Zoa So let us see if there are questions from the last class. We went over, some of the broader kind of issues before we started to look into the specifics.
今天就是向各位提问，就是针对上一堂课，大家有没有什么样的问题想要厘清的？就上一次我们就是从比较广阔的一个角度来谈论这个禁律的这个主题。
If there are any questions, please. No? Okay, very good. So we look at the text itself. Yeah, so we started with verse 1 and 2, which is the overview of this section in this chapter. Remember that this chapter has two sections. The first section is to take a closer look at this problem of distractions. Because distractions is what we are trying to overcome on the one hand, yeah. And on the other hand, therefore, distractions are also which impedes this samadhi that we're talking about here. So samadhi cannot be developed if we don't identify what stands in the way of samadhi. At the same time, samadhi is also. So when samadhi is present, then distractions is absent. So it's like looking at the issue or the task at hand from two perspectives, but two sides of the same coin. So the first side that we're going to look at is identifying the enemy, so to say, and then making a resolve to be free from that.
好，我们现在就是回到这个经文，就是第8章的这个内容禁律。然后这一个上个星期我们已经看了前面的2季，然后这2季最主要是一个概括。概论，关于这一章的一个概论。然后我们上个星期也讨论到这一章最主要分成2个部分。那第一个部分就是让我们仔细的观察到底这一些干扰它的问题是什么，因为这个干扰是我们一方面是要去克服的， 另外一方面是这一些干扰，其实它会阻碍我们的定，我们所谈论的静虑。所以如果我们没有办法去辨识到这一个干扰的话，我们就没有办法去培养这个禅定，这个静虑。然后就是禅定，如果它就是存在的话，那这一个干扰它其实就是缺席的。然后这两者其实是一面，就是一个硬币的两面。那当我们能够辨识到这个静虑之后，我们就下定决心要去对治它。
So under then more specifically in this case, the samadhi that Shantideva focuses on here is not just any samadhi. In fact, there are many possibilities of what your mind is resting evenly in. What your mind is established evenly in. Here, he will focus on bodhicitta.
然后在这一边就是更仔细的来谈论这个我们所要培养的这个静虑，就是吉天菩萨在这一边他着重的其实是我们的这颗心有怎么样的一种可能性是可以安住或是建立在这样的一个内容上，这个内容就是菩提心。
These days, when teachings on bodhicitta, especially more popular versions of this, will paint a picture that is all just, pink and unicorns and cupcakes and, trees to hug, all those, really emotionally very sweet, very inspiring aspects of that. Yeah. But here, Shantideva says, if you don't, identify all the distractions, your heart and mind cannot really settle on bodhicitta. So the first half, the first 89 verses of this chapter, again, will bring out things that you don't normally hear so much when talking about bodhicitta. But this is really important, this other side that we need to attend to as well. Otherwise, all this talk on bodhicitta is just sentimentalism.
就是现在就是在很多关于菩提心这样的教授里面比较有名、比较普遍的这样的一种版本，其实可能就是常常会着重在比较情绪化、比较甜、比较具有启发性的部分呢，譬如说就是抱在一起啦，然后可能就是粉红色等等之类这样的一种形象。但是吉天菩萨在这一边他强调的，就是他谈论的就是如果我们不懂得去辨识到这样的我们内心的干扰或者是这样的一种混乱的状态，然后那我们的心就没有办法安住在菩提心上。所以在这一边前面的89偈其实就是让我们就会把一切关于菩提心的这另外一个面向，是我们一般不常听到的这样的一个面向带出来。然后所以这个面向其实也是非常重要的，并不是我们一般所接触到的比较感性的部分。
Yeah, so let's now read verse 3 and 4.
好，我们现在
Here,
看3和4偈。
Khenpo Kunpel says this 3 and 4. Shantideva begins by first talking about why we need to make a resolve to abandon, in the language that he used, to abandon worldliness, to abandon being tethered to samsara. And this is, I would argue, another way of putting it is how I was saying that we need to be content. It's when we're not content, right? Then we go looking for things. Then we get tethered, we get tied up and dragged around.
然后在这边就是第3、第4偈的 Khenpo Kunpel 就是谈到说，这2偈基本上是提醒我们为什么我们要去就是下定决心要去舍弃这个世俗法，然后这个世俗就是基本上就是被轮回所困这样的一种状态。然后从黎博士的一个分享，他就是说，那另外一种表达的方式其实就是我们要懂得满足，因为我们不知足，所以我们才到处去找、去寻找、去攀援，然后就被一切所有的这个感官娱乐带着走、牵着走、被绑着，然后就到处游走。
Because of loved ones and desire for gain, we fail to turn away from worldly things. These then are the first things to renounce. The prudent should conduct themselves like this. Penetrative insight joined with calm abiding utterly eradicates afflicted states. Knowing this, first search for calm abiding, found by people who are happy to be free from worldly ties. So these are the 2 verses. Yeah. So in this verse 3, without holding back, Shantideva just says it. Now, of course, his audience are already monks, so he's just reminding them what they should already understand. Which apparently they understood, and therefore they have given up loved ones and desire for gain. Of course, in the kind of ideal picture that you paint, that tends to get painted. Why someone has become a monk or a nun is because they have seen the limitations of being attached to, entangled with loved ones and desire for gain. So one is much more concrete, right? Because of our loved ones. And the second is a little more abstract, we want to gain, we want to achieve this, we want to achieve that with regards to the world. So he says, because of these 2 things, then we become stuck and entangled in samsaric existence.
在这第3偈的话，就是吉天菩萨直接就是非常坦白的就讲出来，但是非常坦白讲出来的是什么？就是贪亲爱利等，则难舍世间，故当尽弃彼，随智修观行。就是我们就会贪爱亲人，就是跟我们亲近的人，然后我们也不断的追求这样世间的一些利益。所以我们要记得，就是吉天菩萨他的对象是这一些已经明了什么呢？已经明了就是执着于我们的所爱，执着于利益，其实它本身的一个局限，它本身的过患。所以这一些僧人，他们已经明了了这样的一种就是世俗法的它的局限，然后就已经舍弃了这一切。所以在这边只是进一步的提醒他们。然后第2个层面就是 就第一个层面是我们会执着于我们的就是这一些挚爱，第二个层面就是我们会比较着重在利益的这个部分，就是我们会不断的想要去追求这样的一些的从世间得到的一切利益。那从基于这两者，所以我们在这一个世间这个生死轮回中不断的打转，不断的被束缚着。
The problem is not with who we love. Shantideva is not blaming them. Be clear here. And Shantideva is also not telling you to stop loving them. But Shantideva is saying that on the basis of, because we love the people we love, and on the basis of us wanting to gain and not to lose, in that sense, right, these two things are quite, you can say, normal. Some might even argue biologically, it's part of the DNA. It's how we have evolved. Some might even argue that. I think insofar as that, Shantideva is not disagreeing with that, that these two are very normal. But what he's pointing out is, but because of these two things also, whatever these two situations, whatever good these two situations can bring, these two situations often also result in us, especially us who have taken the Bodhisattva vow, us who said that we want to walk on this path. It keeps us from understanding and seeing, right, the faults of still being caught up in the confusions of samsara, these worldly things. So then he says, therefore, these are the first things to renounce. So he says, renounce what? Again, not rejecting the people we love, especially with this. It's renouncing being attached to the people that we love and being attached to gain. So here, desire for gain, to be attached to gain. It says, give up these two. The prudent should conduct themselves in this way. The careful ones should really conduct themselves in this way. So here also it means, don't force this, right? Don't force this renunciation. Then it becomes very oppressive. It has to be arising from us understanding the dangers and therefore now deciding to be prudent, to be careful.
问题其实并不是在于我们所爱的人，吉天菩萨在这边并不是责备他们，我们必须要搞清楚这一点。也没有吉天菩萨也没有提醒，就是阻止我们继续去爱他们。吉天菩萨在这一边最主要是说，因为我们爱我们的挚爱，因为我们想要得到我们想要得到的，不想要失去我们的一切所得。然后当然就是从世间的角度来说就是非常的正常，而且如果从生物的角度来说，我们可能还会去辩论说这个就是我们基因的一部分呢，所以我们才会去爱人，然后才会传宗接代啊。但是吉天菩萨并没有不同意这一点，他主要要指出的其实是这两种状况，就是我们去爱我们的爱，然后我们想要得到这两种状况，无论是它带来怎么样的利益，同时其实特别是对于我们这一些已经受持菩萨戒的人，我们发愿要走这一条菩萨道的人，它其实是要让我们了解到这两种状况会防止我们去了解和看见，就是困在这个轮回无明中的他的过患。所以这 这个是首先我们必须要舍弃的，要处理的。然后并不是说我们要去拒绝我们所爱的人，其实最主要是看到他的过患，我们要看到怎么去舍弃我们的这样的一种执着，执着于我们所爱，执着于我们所要得到的这样的一种心。然后就是最后一句基本上是说，那这个谨慎的人，就是智者，他们会以这样的方式来行事，然后不要就是非常的勉强，就是去迫使这样的一种出离，因为它会变得非常的压抑。了解其中的过患，并且从中得到一种确认，我们要谨慎的行事，这样才是更合理的一种态度。
So, verse 4, penetrative insight, vipassana, join with calm abiding. And this is what utterly eradicates the afflicted states. And so, these two qualities of the mind is what finally removes the mental defilements, which then lead us to the state of being awake. So knowing this, he says, first we have to search for calm abiding. We have to find ways for the mind to settle into a state of abiding calmly. Now, where does this come from? Calm abiding? There you go, right? The fourth line. Found by people who are happy to be free from worldly ties. That's the contentment I was talking about. Even in this, in the specific or limited context of like, okay, now I'm going to do my practice. Now I'm going to meditate. So you have to develop that contentment that right now, this is good, this is enough. So you have to be happy to be free from worldly ties. If you force yourself to be free from worldly ties, very hard to achieve calm abiding. It's not calm abiding, it's tightness of mind. All you're doing is, right, you're tying yourself up. Many people do this, many people who have meditated many years. What they've done is they have used like meditation practice to tie themselves, very tightly, so that they won't be distracted, so that they won't move. So it has the semblance of being like focus, but this focus is the result of having tied yourself with meditation. This is not samadhi. This is not calm abiding. This is abiding without choice because you've tied yourself up. So not like that, but it has to come from you're happy to be free from the burdens.
那在第4季我们可以看到，就是说，就是只有只结合上观，能够灭诸烦恼。然后当我们了解到这一点之后，我们就会想要去寻求培养止。那止要怎么培养呢？那止就是首先我们要知道，我们要能够愿意摆脱这个世间的束缚。这个也就是前面所谈到的知足，就是我们对于这个能够摆脱世间的束缚，我们是感到非常的愉悦的。这个并不是逼使我们就是想要去做这一件事情，而那个不是禅定，不是一种安定的力量，而是我们逼使自己，然后让自己的心就是束缚起来。 很多人其实禅修是这样来处理的，就是他们并不是很自在的，因为看到世间的过患，看到这一些世间娱乐的过患，然后就是想要去寻求这样的一种安止的状态，而是他们逼使自己，就透过不断比较强硬的一种手段来束缚自己的心，让自己处于一种就是专注的一种状态，但是那并不是禅定。那个只是在禅修的过程中把自己束缚出来，然后让自己没有别的选择。真正的禅定并不是那么一回事，而是它其实是需要来自于我们对于摆脱这一切的束缚，我们是感到非常的快乐并且憧憬的。
Again, a reminder, generally, when we read, receive Buddhist teachings, we have to always kind of understand that whatever we're receiving at that moment, it's like one part of this elephant, and we are blind men. We are blind, So whatever we receive is like one part of this elephant that we are sort of feeling. Don't be so quick to say, oh, an elephant is like a tree trunk because we have grasped, one of the legs. And then whether you like tree trunks or not, then you will have a strong reaction to the thought, oh, elephant is like a tree trunk, If you like trees, you're like, oh man, this is so good. But if you have been traumatized by tree trunks, then you'll realize your concept now, oh, elephant is like a tree trunk. I hate it. I don't like elephants, So here, especially again in these 89 verses, some people say, oh, this is anti-body. Oh, this is anti-body. This is anti-family, anti-this, anti-that. It's like, that is when you kind of zoom in and fixate on and not understand how this particular set of instructions work within a broader context. And specifically here, it's really important that our not being attached to these things that keep distracting us is something that arises from seeing and understanding and appreciating the weight of being tied down by samsaric forces and the weightlessness and the freedom and the benefits of being freed from that. It has to come from there.
另外一个提醒就是说，当我们在学习佛法的时候，在那一个学习的当下，不要太快的，就是去判断，就是陷入一种判断，就是说，我们现在了解到这一个层面，然后就认为，佛法讲的就是这一个，就很像就是瞎子摸象一样，然后我们抓到了它的其中一部分，然后就以为大象就是那个样子的，不要那么快的就跳入这样的一种判断。如果我们在摸象的过程中，我们就抓到那个象的脚，然后就觉得，这个大象它就像这个象脚一样，就像树干一样。那如果你喜欢树的话，那你可能会很高兴；但是如果你对树有恐惧的话，那你可能会排斥。然后可能在接下来的这一些内容，你看到的时候，就看到这一些就是这一些就这部分的教授的其中一些小段，然后可能就会很快 陷入一种判断，就觉得啊，这样的一种教授，这样的一种指导，其实就是反抗反对身体啦，或者是就是反家庭主义啦之类的，不要那么快的卡在其中，因为我们必须要了解到这一些特殊的这样的一种教授，这样的一种教法，其实我们必须要从一个更广阔的一个角度去体会它，去理解它。那我们非常重要的是要去了解到，不要执着于我们所执着的东西，这个必须要建立在我们能够看见我们怎么被这个轮回的这一些苦，这一些负担所束缚着，我们能不能够看到它的过患，能不能够看到它的重量，我们必须这一切都必须要从这样的一种理解而升起的。
So in this next section, verse 5 to 16, Shantideva will talk about giving up attachment to beings. And then from 17 to 24, he will talk about giving up attachment to worldly gain.
然后接下来就是5到第16季，吉天菩萨会谈到我们要去舍弃一切对众生的执着。那从第17季到第24季，则是吉天菩萨会谈到我们要去舍弃对世间所得的执着。
So this attachment to people. So maybe taking the example of Buddha Shakyamuni, in his life. Yeah. So you all heard, about how he grew up privileged. Later tradition says he grew up, in 3 palaces and everything. Father provided everything. Okay. So that he was a prince, But I would say, I think compare the standards of his life, 2,600 years ago. We are now, if you're listening to this teaching, my guess is, our standard now, we are emperors compared to, the kind of pleasures that he had. Of course, in the ancient texts, especially when they exaggerate, they're like, oh, it's so much and so much and so much. But, let's look at historical records and archaeology. I can say, you and me, if not better than Siddhartha, I think close, So don't just think, oh, well, I've never been a king before, or I've never been a prince before. How do I know that living like a prince is not what ultimately brings happiness? All of us are prince and princesses, kings and queens in our palaces, right? That we have. Yeah. So Siddhartha grew up like that, and also protected from seeing the realities of life. So he grew up like that.
就是在这一边，如果我们谈到对人的执着，那我们以就是释迦牟尼佛为例，大家都可能听过，过去就是他活得多么的优越，然后他的父亲为他提供了3座皇宫，然后提供生活的一切所需。但是如果我们从以前就2600年前的这样的一种生活水准来看，我们现在的这个生活水准，搞不好就是比悉达多太子当时候的情况更优越。那如果我们就是从整个历史的这个记录来看的话，我们如果哪怕没有比他更优越，可能也跟他差不多，因为我们每个人其实都是我们自己的王国中，我们自己的王宫中的王子跟公主。然后那讲到这个悉达多太子，那他是这样的一种环境下长大的，他是就是也被保护着，不去看到事实，世间的真相。
Yes, so then, at the age of 19, he married this wife that by all accounts, it was a very loving marriage. Yes, arranged and everything, but he was married. And they remained married for 10 years. Because at the age of 29, and then over the years, things began to build, and he began to have more and more an awareness of the realities of samsara. And it said that finally, when he went outside his palace, right? How many of us have actually gone outside of our palaces? We have to ask that question. Because sometimes we listen to, we read Siddhartha's story, we think, oh, what a sheltered life. We forget how sheltered we are. We forget how sheltered we are. We think, well, so we walk around thinking, oh no, I'm not sheltered. But in fact, I mean, if you really think about the story, right? Was Siddhartha so dumb? It says that, oh, he never saw aging. He never saw anyone would have seen, like you and me would have seen, but not really see, right? Not really see old age, sickness, and death. So we are all walking around still protected by our father, Shuddhodana, from seeing reality. But it says that finally he saw. When he saw that, he said, I cannot stay here. I have to go. And this happened right when his son, his first son, was born. Right when his son was born, which is the happiest time, especially being in the royal context. Now he has an heir. His throne is secure now, all of that, like it seems like everything has fallen into place to be so good for him now. But his understanding that, no, this is not it, led him to make the decision to leave. And it is said that when he was leaving, the last thing he did was he went to see his sleeping wife and son. And then some people, again, misunderstand and say, oh, that is so cruel, so irresponsible. He left his, new child and wife, and, but it says in the sources, he said, I really have to go because staying here, I cannot help you. How can I help either of you from the sufferings of old age, sickness, and death? Because if I stay here, I'll just be exactly in the same boat as you. I need to go find an answer. I need to free you, free both of you from the sufferings of old age, sickness, and death. The sufferings of samsara. So with the heaviest of hearts, with regards to how he loved them, he left. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about renunciation. Not a heartless, irresponsible, like, oh, I don't love you anymore. No, not that. But you begin to see and understand that if I remain like everybody else here, who is being helped? Nobody. Not myself, not the people I love. So this example of Siddhartha, we have to look more carefully.
那在这边就是在悉达多太子19岁的时候，然后他就结婚了，娶妻，然后有个非常圆满的婚姻，然后他们就是结婚了10年，然后但是在这10年里面就有非常多的事情发生，然后他开始越来越警觉到这个，就觉知到这个世间这个轮回它的真相是什么。然后当他出到去自己的皇宫，从自己的皇宫出去，其实我们 但我们可能都很熟悉悉达多太子的这样的一个故事，但是我们有多少人是真正走出我们的王宫呢？我们可能在看就是这个故事的时候，就觉得哦，原来悉达多太子出到王宫之后才知道生老病死这样的一个实相，但是我们每个人每天都可能看见这样的一种现象在我们的身边，但是我们又是否真正看见它呢？其实我们并没有，我们反而并没有真正的去看到事实的真相。那我们其实跟悉达多太子的父亲一样，就是被保护的很好，就被保护的非常好，看不见我们这个世间真正的样子是什么。然后，所以当悉达多太子他看见这样的一种实相，看见这个轮回的过患，他觉得他不能够再待了，他必须要离开。而这一个正好发生在他的孩子刚出生的时候，其实那个是最美满的时刻，因为那个时候当他有了孩子，然后他的王位也非常的稳定了，然后就是从整个王族的一个角度来说，其实这个是非常非常优越的一种时光。但是他知道这一个并不是真正的快乐，他必须要离开。而在他离开的时候，他最后一件事情去做的就是去看他的妻子，就是在熟睡的妻子还有他的儿子。然后很多人可能就会批评说，那他多么的不负责任，竟然把就是这个妻子还有他的刚出生的儿子就这样的舍弃。但是他必须要离开，因为他没有办法帮助他们，他没有办法帮助他们摆脱就老病死这样的苦，他必须要去寻求解脱，必须要去寻求解脱的方式，解脱这一些苦的方式，所以他以一个非常沉重的心离开，而不是一个没有心的一种状态。因为如果当他持续待在这样的一种环境里面，其实大家都是处于同样的状况，那大家都一样会陷入这样的老病死的痛苦当中，所以他必须要去寻求协助，他必须要能够找到方法帮助自己，帮助他所爱的人。
So Siddhartha cut his attachment to his wife, his son, his father, the mother who raised him, which is actually his birth mother's sister. So he cut his attachment to them out of his love for them.
所以悉达多太子就是把他对妻子、对儿子、对父亲、对他后母，也就是他亲生母亲的姐妹的这个执着，他就把它断除。
So this is how, we can understand, right? Like, what are we talking about, when we say, when it says here, abandon, give up attachment to beings. It's not, discarding them like they are a burden. It actually comes from, especially in the Mahayana tradition, comes from love and compassion. So we cannot just use our mouth and talk about this, blah, 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 blah. Some of us are using Dharma to get away from our family. Especially in the West, it's more likely to happen, We're using Dharma to get away from our family. Then we don't get along, with the family. We say, see, Dharma says I should not be attached to them. This is misusing Dharma, misunderstanding Dharma, misusing Dharma, you know.
然后就是我们要了解到，就是这个舍弃对众生的执着，并不是就是随意的因为他们没有用了，或者是我们讨厌他们，所以我们舍弃他们，并不是，反而是因为爱，因为慈悲，就是因为慈悲的关系，所以我们远离他们，我们摆脱这个对他们的执着。然后我们有些人可能就学了佛之后，然后就开始就是滥用佛法，然后错误理解佛法，然后以佛法之名去摆脱我们的家庭。
Yeah, so especially in the West, especially younger people, you know, where your parents are just learning how to, you know, let you be a grown up, you know, especially in the West, you know, the way to do this and the way to practice love, to practice being not attached, has to be a little different. You know, it cannot be to antagonize them with your Dharma activities. Maybe that's not your intention, you know, but sometimes if you do your Dharma practice in such a way to antagonize them, that's not really helping either. Okay, so you need to be sensitive to how they are feeling about your Dharma practice. So in the West, I always say, you know, don't let your commitment to the Dharma be someone else's problem. Remember that principle. But then also remember what we're going to be learning from Shantideva on the need to work on freeing ourselves from distractions. So you have to balance those both sides.
那特别是在西方，就一些年轻人，就开始家人就慢慢的就是让他们就以一个成年人的方式来对待他们，然后就在这个过程，其实我们要去练习怎么去培养这个慈悲，培养爱，然后去跟家人互动，然后不要就是以佛法之名，然后去引起他们的反感，然后不要让我们对佛法这样的一种投入，这样的一种承诺，然后导致别人会产生很多的埋怨。我们必须要了解到，就是他们的心情，我们能够理解他们的心情，然后我们也不要招致他们的一种反弹。
Otherwise, you know, your family and friends will resent the Dharma. Of course, in Asia, maybe there's also resentment because if you become more and more focused in your Dharma practice, then you cannot hang out with them. You cannot, you know, do all the things that they want you to do with them. They still probably resent, but because culturally it's different in Asia, that resentment won't become too harmful. Eventually, when they see that you are serious, usually in Asia, they will let you go. They say, okay, yes, this is what you have chosen. But in the West, you know, this is so culturally different. They think you are stuck in a cult, you know. Then you cut off their potential attraction to the Dharma. So you have to tread more carefully in the West.
那就是其实如果我们这样做的话，就是会导致我们的家人或者是我们的朋友，然后会产生对佛法的反弹、抗拒，然后亚洲当然也有可能会有反弹，就是如果我们非常投入到我们的佛法的事业、佛法的活动当中，可能没有办法跟他们去进行他们希望我们做的事情的话，那也会产生一定的反弹。但是因为文化上的不同，所以在亚洲的话，如果他看到你真的非常的认真，然后他看到这样的一种佛法在你身上所产生的一个好的变化的话，他还是会让你去投入，然后就让你去参与。但是在西方的话，可能就是因为文化上的不同，所以可能就父母或者是家人朋友就以为你就陷入了这样的一种 就是错误的一种热忱，然后就可能会导致他们和佛法之间的缘就被砍断了。
So for example, if your family is religious, oh, actually, now that you are, into the Dharma, you should go with them, to church. Because for us, it's not what we externally do that matters. And it's not deception if you go with them to church now. It makes them happy. You're doing this as an offering. Because what they fear most is, again, that they have lost you to some cult, to some mind-controlling group or some extreme group. That's their fear. So you reassure them, no, I'm just starting to figure out how to be a better person, with Dharma practice.
就特别如果你的家庭是非常信仰性的，然后如果你非常投入到这个佛法的话，那其实你更应该跟他们去教堂，因为对于佛教徒来说，我们外在所做的事情其实并没有那么重要，最重要的是我们做这一件事情是为了利益其他的人，我们能够让他们快乐，我们这么做是当做一种供养，就为了让他们快乐，就是以这样的一种行为去供养他们。然后因为什么家人会产生反弹，可能他会非常担心你这样的一种行为可能就是会陷入这样的一种狂热，他会错误的认为你可能是被什么样的一种迷信的一种组织所困住了。所以如果我们能够这样来去跟他们互动的话，其实我们可以确保我们就是向他们确保我们其实是透过佛法的这样的一种修持让自己变得更好，而不是陷入一种错误或者是迷信或者是一些奇奇怪怪的一种狂热的教义当中。
Yes, Judy.
I've been thinking about this word attachment, and I have a little bit of trouble with it because I think it's hard to
entanglement.
That's I think a better enmeshment is also a word. It's the ickiness, the ickiness that grasping results in relationships. And so I think entanglements is an easier word to understand because we're naturally attached to people we love. It's at least that's the way I think of that term.
Yes. I've mentioned this many times now, but all the books use attachment, so we're stuck with it.
Okay, well.
That's why I continue to have business, because I'm trying to get people to
clarify. Yeah, the nuances are very important in all of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
然后刚刚有一个
This is a translation issue, so I don't know if in the Chinese and Spanish. Right. So just explain to them. Don't worry about it.
就是刚刚
English translation issue, which is crucial for those of us who are learning Dharma in English.
困扰的是这个英文的用词，那这个 attachment 执着，那就是这位同学会认为，其实这个用 attachment 好像不是那么理想，因为我们很自然的其实就会去执取我们所爱的人。但是如果所以从整个心理学的角度来说，我们这样的一种心境是非常自然的。但是如果我要强调这一边的这个对众生的这一种强烈的执着，然后在这种关系中的强烈的执着，另外一个语词 entanglement 就是束缚，反而是一个更恰当的一 翻译的抉择。所以在这一边这个语词之间的这样的一种差异，其实是需要注意的。然后就李博士也认同这一点，然后他说他在其他的情况下，其实他也会用 entanglement 而不是 attachment， 但是大部分情况其实是很多的佛书里面我们所采用的都是 attachment， 所以这个可能对于以英语为母语的人来说，他会有一些困扰。
Yeah, like in development psychology, like it's really important for a child to have healthy attachment. And so, again, young people, if you are going to have kids, don't misuse Dharma. Oh, you need to be detached. There has to be healthy attachment to the parents. In fact, one time His Holiness, one year when he was teaching in the US, he was emphasizing this point, and because he was also talking to young Tibetans who have settled in the West. Yeah, he said, His Holiness said, I really admire, how in the West parents teach their children to be independent and give them the independence to really develop. He said that first. Then he said, but then secondly, he said, but as you are now here doing this, also don't forget that there are things in our way that is also important. And he says, for example, he says, in the old days, a child is physically in contact a lot with the mother. And he says, well, these days, mother or father, doesn't matter. Both even better. But just the way Tibetan society is like, so the child is, on the mother. And so he says that kind of physical contact, especially when the child is not cognitively completely kind of developed yet, but that kind of physical closeness to the body touching body, he says, gives confidence to the child, security to the child. And he says, don't forget that and say, oh, independence. He says, that's really important. He says, first you give them that, then you teach them how to be independent. And he says, and that we are very bad in Asia, he says. He says, children that are 20, 30, still have no sense of independence.
Ah, 就是当然这一个如果是从整个一个孩子的成长的这样的一种心理学来说的话，其实一种健康的对父母的执取，对父母的在意是非常重要的。然后我们不能够就是滥用佛法，然后就是说，哦，你看佛法说我们要就是摆脱这样的一种执着，不能够用在这样的一种背景中。然后这一种健康的执取、健康的在意我们的父母，其实对这个孩子的成长是扮演着非常非常关键的一个角色。然后就法王曾经就是对就是在西方成长的这样的这一些年轻的藏人曾经有过这样的一番谈话，然后他首先就谈到说，就是他非常羡慕这一些西方人怎么去就教育他们的孩子，然后让他们能够变得非常的独立。但是他转折就是说，他是以前古时候其实一个小朋友，他是就是在他的外在，就他的身体是常常跟母亲，因为在西藏的这样的一个文化里面，其实是孩子跟母亲的关系是非常的密切，所以就是孩子跟母亲之间，他的这个身体跟身体之间的接触是非常频密的，所以这个孩子基本上当他还没有就完全发育成长的时候，这样的持续的身体跟身体之间的接触，其实对这个孩子可以产生非常大的一种安全，给予孩子非常大的安全感。 所以我们不能够忘记这一点，我们先给予他这样的一种安全感，之后才来培养这个孩子要怎么去变得更加的独立自主。那现在就是，但是在东方的话，其实现在的孩子可能哪怕到20-30岁，其实他们对于独立自主这样的一种概念还是非常的不成熟，这个是东方这样的一种不理想的情况。
So let's take a short break and then we will resume.
好，我们先休息一会儿。
Okay, we're back. So now let's read verse 5 to 16. That section on giving up attachment to beings. Beings brief, ephemeral, who strongly cling to what is also transient, will catch no glimpse of those they love for many thousands of their future lives. Not seeing them, their minds will have no joy. They therefore will not rest in equanimity. But even if they see them, they are not content, and as before, the pain of longing stays. If I crave for other beings, a veil is cast upon the perfect truth. Wholesome disillusion melts away, and finally there comes the sting of pain. My thoughts are all for them, and thus my life is frittered by. My family and friends all change and pass, for whom the changeless Dharma is cast out. For if I act like childish beings, sure it is that I shall fall to evil destinies. So why do I keep company with infants who lead me to a state so far from virtue? One moment friends, the next their bitter enemies. Even pleasant things arouse their discontent. Ordinary people, it is hard to please them. A beneficial word, and they resent it, turning me instead from what is good. And when I close my ears to what they say, their anger makes them fall to lower states. Jealous of superiors, they vie with equals. Proud to those below, they strut when praised. Say something untoward, they seethe with rage. What good was ever had from childish folk? Keep company with them, and what will follow? Self-aggrandizement and scorn for others. Talk about the good things of samsara. Every kind of vice is sure to come. Only ruin can result from such a link between myself and others, for they will bring no benefit to me, and I, in turn, can do them nothing good. Therefore, flee the company of childish beings. Greet them when you meet with smiles that keep on terms of common courtesy without inviting intimate relations. Like bees that get their honey from the flowers, take only what will serve the practice of the Dharma. Treat everyone like new acquaintances and keep yourself from close familiarity. As I say, these are not necessarily words we like to hear, but let's go through and see what they can say to us.
就是像刚刚所说的，可能这些都不是我们想听的话，但是我们来看一看到底吉天菩萨要谈论的是什么。
Those that we really feel like, I really care about, I love them, I really care about them. And so there he says, with regards to them, understand that whatever time you can even spend, like now, right now, even if it is 24/7, it just passes like that. And then what? Yeah.
对于那些我们所挚爱的人，我们真正关心的人，我们要了解到，就是无论多少时间我们可以花在他们身上，我们可以陪伴他们的，其实它都是一刹那的时间就过去了。然后呢？
And then, of course, now, in the last year to two with the pandemic, you're like, oh, spending too much time together.
然后就像过去这2年
Maybe 24/7 is not such a good idea.
过去这2年，然后当然被逼花太多的时间在一起，也不是一件好事。就24小时，然后1个星期7天，那么长的时间花在一起。
So verse 5 it says, beings brief and ephemeral. So all of us. And if we strongly cling to what is also brief and ephemeral, then what is the result, The result is of the brief time that we have here. That's it. So implied in this is actually, there's another way, where we can be connected for thousands of lifetimes, but in a skillful way, in a way that actually lifts each other more and more out of a state of confusion in the state of clarity and liberation and freedom.
那在这第5季里面呢，我们就可以看到，其实我们本身就是一个无常的个体，就是一个无常的本质。然后，但我们也去贪执这一些无常，这些人本身的性质也是无常。那在这个百千生里面，我们到底会形成怎么样的一个结果呢？ 这个结果就是我们的时间，我们所拥有的时间其实是非常非常短暂的。那从一个我们实际更能够去体会的一个角度来看的话，就是说，在这百千生里面，我们其实互相都有因缘。然后在这个互相有因缘的过程里面，我们能不能够很善巧的，就是互动？然后在这个互动中，我们可以互相的去成就 彼此，我们让彼此可以增长更多的慈悲与智慧，可以得到更多的自在，可以得到更多的自由解脱。
So verse 6 it says, not seeing them, our minds will have no joy. And so we cannot rest in equanimity. We cannot rest satisfied. And then if we see them, after a while, we become discontented, the pandemic situation, seeing too much, Then, as before, the pain that comes from longing comes, whether you don't see them or you see them. This is just how it often becomes. And all of this, whether seeing or not seeing, what is the common factor here is lacking clarity. Lacking understanding of the deeper truth of who we are, what we are, how we can more skillfully be with each other. Is when that is lost, then all we experience is the pain that comes from being entangled with each other.
在第6集，我们就可以看到，就是当我们看不到我们的这一些挚爱的时候，我们心里就会不愉悦，我们没有办法就体验到这个平等。但是如果当我们看的就是相处太多的话，那我们又会因此而不满足，就很像我们在这个疫情当中，然后就太长时间待在一起。所以无论是我们是因为希求对方而感受到的苦，又或者是太密切的处在一起而产生抗拒的这样的一种苦，其实它就是这样而来的。然后无论我们看得见或者是看不见，其实这一切都是缺乏对真相这更深层的真相的一种理解。那我们应该怎么样更善巧的和一切众生互动呢？然后如果我们看不清楚的话，其实我们所经验到的就是现在陷入到束缚当中。
So 7 says, if I crave for other beings, then what happens is a veil is cast upon the perfect truth. Perfect truth means, the way things are. So when I crave, right? Usually when you crave something, whatever it is, it's not actually the thing now you are craving. Now you have distorted what is. It's often an exaggeration that we are now craving. And since what we are now craving is no longer what we think we want, therefore it can never bring the satisfaction we're looking for,
在这一边就是第7季，然后如果我们贪着某个有情的话，则会形成一个非常的大的障碍我们的实性慧。那这个实性慧是什么？其实就是一切万物它真实存在的样貌。所以当我们执取它的时候，我们其实看到的是一种扭曲的状态。我们经常当我们是去执取某样东西的时候，其实我们是过分夸大我们所执取的这一个对象。然后就是当我们处于这样的一种状态的时候，然后当我们拥有它了之后，我们就会不满足，在这个过程里面就是没有办法达到满足，就不断的想要更多。
So this line, and so when a veil is cast over the situation, then wholesome disillusion melts away. In my translation, it says wholesome disillusion. What it's talking about is, I don't know, this word wholesome is a little, I think of, somehow when I see the word wholesome, I think of, healthy cereal. Healthy cereal with no sugar. I don't know why, Anyway, the wholesome disillusion here is talking about our ability to recognize like the faults of samsara and therefore go, "Oi, yikes," that goes away.
就是当这个我们去贪执某个众生的话，它也一样会毁我们的厌离心，然后终遭愁叹苦。就是当Sorry, Dr. I missed that. Can you repeat again?
You have to tell me again what you heard, then I can tell you what you did not hear.
When the veil is cast away, wholesome something.
Okay, so when the veil, right, is cast upon the truth, that means covers the truth of the situation, right? Then wholesome disillusion, which means, yeah, seeing samsara and its faults and therefore going, I'm done with that. That goes away when we don't see the truth of the situation. And we don't see the truth of the situation because we are craving after an exaggeration of what we think we want or who we think we want.
就是当这个障碍，就是贪执与众生这样的一种障碍，它不仅就是会障碍我们的这个实性慧，它同时也会障碍我们的厌离心。这个厌离心是怎么来的？就是我们这个能够看见轮回的过患，并且想要发愿出离这样的一种心，它就会被摧毁。所以因为我们不断的去执取这一些就被已经扭曲被夸张的这样的一种所缘境，所以我们就会失去了这样的一种能力去看到轮回的过患，然后想要就是发愿出离这样的一种心。
And because of that, the last line, the sting of pain comes again.
然后因为这样，所以我们终遭到这个愁叹苦。
My thoughts are all for them, and thus my life is frittered by. So that you become then obsessed with them. What is this them, you know? Again, it's not the object, the original object, so to say, that you think you care about, you think you love. It's the object covered with the veil, the exaggerated. Yeah. So your thoughts are always just after that. But my family and friends all change and pass. And here, you know, like on the surface, it sounds like it's the usual way we think about change and impermanence. Oh, they will change, they will pass, then they will be gone. Yes, of course, it has that meaning, but you can also understand this as saying, they ultimately who we love and who we are attached to, and more to the point, who we are attached to, it's a frozen exaggeration that we are attached to. The actual original object or person that you have a fondness for, that you care about, that person, that family, that relative, that friend, they are continually different, changing, right? Sometimes you could say growing, sometimes regressing, you know, but whatever it is, they are constantly changing. So in fact, the object of our love and care doesn't remain unchanging for you to love and care about. And if you don't see that, then all your supposed love and care becomes part of the confusion.
.这第8季是讲，当我们去执取他们的时候，其实我们这一生就会虚度。那就是其实当我们执取他的时候，并不是这个所缘，并不是 真正我们所关心，我们以为我们关心我们爱的这个所缘，而是这个所缘本身是已经被蒙上了一层障，蒙上了一层纱，阻碍我们去看见真正的这个所缘。然后我们常常就是会不断的去追寻，不断的去拾取这样的一个对象。但是其实我们所汲取的这样的我们的家人、我们的朋友，他们常常都在变，他们的不断的在改变。然后从这个表面上的角度来看的话，可能这个是我们一般理解无常的这样的一种概念。但是如果我们仔细去看的话，其实我们可以了解到这边所提到的，究竟我们所汲取的是我们心中这个已经被封印起来的这样的一种印象，但是这个我们所汲取的这个对象，它本身并不是一个已经封印起来的一个所缘，而是它本身是持续不断在改变，无论它是不断的成长，还是它不断的衰弱，其实这个过程的不断的在改变。那实际上，我们对于这个我们的这种爱是没有办法维持不变的。那如果我们看不到的话，我们就是所有的爱跟关怀，其实就会变成无明的一部分了。
And so verse 8 can be read as, because we don't fully, clearly see the unstable, changing nature of who we love, who we care about. Therefore, we give up the changeless Dharma. What is the changeless Dharma? Okay, don't imagine it as something permanent sitting over there. Oh, that you have given that up. It's actually the changeless Dharma is the Dharma that points out that everything is changing and in constant flux, unstable, unreliable. Now, don't get into all this wordplay, but then isn't that changing, unchanging? These are games that mental games that undergraduates play, in the classes that I used to teach.
那这一段其实我们也可以这样来理解，就是如果当我们没有办法真正的看到这个我们所爱的人，我们所汲取的这样的人，他的这个恒常不变的特质的话，那我们就会舍弃这个不变的法。并不是说这个所谓的不变的法，并不是说它就是恒常处在那里，并不是，而是说这个不变的法，它是能够指出一切现象皆是无常变化，然后就恒常处于一个动态当中的。然后如果你对于这样的一种名相觉得非常的困扰，然后也不需要太在意，因为这个是就是大学生一般会练习的一种脑力激荡就像李博士曾经所教导的学生那样。
Then from 9 to 14, Shantideva slightly shifts in his kind of arguments. Goes in a slightly, different direction now. Here from 9 to 14, he's going to point out how the so-called friends that you have, the so-called objects of your love, they can bring you so much trouble.
然后在这边就是从第9到第14，然后这个吉天菩萨稍微把他的这个立论的方向调整了一下，然后他就指出说，你所谓的这个你所爱的人，你有的朋友，然后其实很多时候他可以为你带来非常多的麻烦。
His goal is not for you to judge other people, for you to have a superiority complex. His goal is not for you, to kind of blame other people and say, oh, you're unreliable, you betray me, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not the goal, okay? He's just bringing out things that we often cover over because we have exaggerated how great and how wonderful this relationship is and not see, especially that in many ways, again, not saying that these people are evil, no, but because they are in a state of confusion themselves, and we are trying to get out of confusion, or supposedly we say we want to get out of this confusion, then when we relate with them, we got to be careful not to get sucked into that kind of confusion. So the 9 to 14, they are called childish beings, immature, meaning spiritually uninformed.
刚才这么说，并不是说，要让我们就是去批判别人，或者是让我们感到非常的优越，而是吉天菩萨在这一边让我们去正视我们一般上会忽略的这个事实，因为我们一般上对于现象的一个理解，其实我们都是夸大其词，我们并没有看到很多不同的层面。其实我们所执取的这一些对象，他们本身都属于一种无明的状态当中。那如果对于我们就是说我们发了这个菩提心，我们想要就是摆脱这个无明的话，我们要非常的小心，不要被他们牵入到同样的无明的状态。然后在这一边就是会提到这一类的人，他们是一种凡愚。然后这凡愚就是说，他们其实是从整个心智的这个层面，就是从修行的这个心智的层面，其实它是比较不足的。
So to use the image of like infants and children is to emphasize how you can't help it. Like children, like infants, they can't help it. They're not, again, like right developmentally, right? Even from the perspective of development biology, right? Like we said, the brains are not fully formed yet, So in a way, it's not their fault. It's just the situation of samsara that, right? I should not. So it says, for if I act like childish beings, surely it is that I shall fall in infants who lead me to a state so far from virtue. What leads me? My getting entangled in those situations leads me to a state that is far from virtue. Again, Shantideva is not blaming the childish beings. He is here pointing out the disadvantages of us getting sucked into samsaric drama, not dharma, samsaric drama.
然后在这一边就用了这样的一种形象，然后这些形象就是以小朋友，就是这婴儿或者是小朋友来譬喻，其实他要强调的就是说，我们完全没有办法。就对于这一些小朋友来说，他们的一些行为我们其实完全没有办法，因为如果是从整个生物的成长的角度来说的话， 那当这一些小朋友他们的就是脑部发展还没有很完善的时候，他们做了一些行为，其实也不是他们的错，他们就是目前的一个条件就是处于这样的一种状态，所以当我们去跟他们互动的时候，我们被他们牵入到这样的一个情况，就被牵入到苦中，或者是不断的在轮回中打转。那真正的让我们为什么会陷入到这里？这个轮回当中，其实是因为我们的执着，而不是因为就是并不是指说这些人就是一个就是这个过患的对象，而是我们对于他们的执着导致我们陷入这样的一种情况。然后在这一边是最主要是要指出我们陷入到这个生死轮回中的这样的一种剧场，它的不利，它的过患是什么
？So in the 10, 11, 12, he gives you scenarios that we have run into, all the time. Yeah. One moment, friends, the next, bitter enemies. Like people who are madly in love with each other. Next moment could be 10 years later, right? You are trying to kill each other. Or you are going to the court to sue each other. Very strange, Is that, so then when you look back and you say, those 10 years, is that love? What is that? How can you love someone so much and then suddenly, maybe not suddenly, but then 10 years later, all you can think of is how to destroy them. So what is the nature of those experiences? Yeah? Even pleasant things arouse their discontent. Ordinary people, it is hard to please them. Ordinary means mundane, those who have not cultivated their minds.
然后10、11、12季其实是会谈到非常多，我们都经常陷入的这样的一种状况啊，譬如说就是刹那成密友，然后续复结仇，就是像有些人他可能就彼此之间就非常疯狂的相爱，但是可能10年之后可能唯一想做的就是杀了对方，或者是就是在法院中，然后想置对方于死地。其实这样就非常的奇怪。那如果说回顾这10年，到底这10年真的是爱吗？然后现在如果真的是爱的话，为什么这一刻影响到的只是摧毁这一个人呢？所以到底这样的一种特质，我们这一些经验的特质，它到底是什么？哪怕是再美好的经验，其实它也会带来不满足。这就是我们这一些奸人世俗的人，所以经常会陷入的一种状况。
Like verse 11, it says, so even, sometimes you say a beneficial word, but they resent it. And because of that, you also think, oh, from now on, I'm not going to help to say. So you turn away from the good because of that experience. And when I close my ears to what they say, and then when you don't pay attention to them, then they become angry. And that anger will lead them to the lower realms, so to say. You don't have to take it so literally, but that anger destroys their happiness. So then your happiness is destroyed, their happiness is destroyed.
然后就像第11季，就是当我们想要劝告别人的时候，反而就是让别人生气。 然后就自己反而就是会起退心，然后就想要离开，就是这一切的善。又或者是当别人讲的某一些话，然后我们不愿意去跟从的时候，然后反而导致他生气，然后因为他生气，所以他就陷入到恶趣当中的。然后像这样的一种情况，其实我们日常生活常会发生。然后所以当然这样的一种情况出现的时候，我们不仅摧毁了我们自己的快乐，我们也摧毁了他人的快乐。
Then 12, huh? This 12, it describes how we often are, we're jealous of those whom we think is better than us. Then those whom we think we're equal with, we compete with them. Then those whom we think are not as good as us, we're proud. We look down on them. And then when people praise, we strut around. And then when people say something that is not flattering to us, we seethe in rage and anger. This is the childish ways. So he's saying here, when we get involved like this, we be turned into helplessly childish, and then others are also helplessly childish. So he says in 13, why keep this kind of company? And even when things are going well, when you are together, like, talk about the good things in samsara, often that also leads to negativity. So here, right, it says, in this way of being related to others, only ruin can result between you and others. And so he's saying, don't form these kinds of relationships. Don't encourage, don't stay in this kind of relationships. This kind of being connected to the world.
那第12季就是说，就常常我们可能就是会对于那些比我们能力更高的人，我们就会嫉妒；然后对于跟我们能力差不多的时候，我们就会跟他互相竞争。那对于那些比我们差的人，我们就会看不起他们。所以当然如果别人就称赞我们的时候，我们就会就是非常的高兴。然后当别人就讲一些我们不喜欢的话的时候，那我们就会非常的其实我们的这一种行为其实就很像，就非常的幼稚。然后我们自己本身就是陷入到这一种变成一个完全没有办法的一种非常幼稚的一种状态。然后别人也一样，在这样的一个过程里面也变成这样的非常幼稚的一种状态。那为什么我们要去经营，或者是要去结下这样的一种缘，然后去就是结交这样的一种友谊呢？所以在13季里面，他就会说，不要去投入到这样的一种关系当中，因为它没有带来任何的利益，然后只是不断的就是自赞毁他，就有非常多这样的一种过患，然后陪伴就和这样的一种就不幼稚的人一起互动的话，其实对我们并没有任何的帮助，对他们也没有任何的帮助。
Now, don't read this section as Shantideva saying either of these two. One, don't think, Shantideva is saying all your relationships are like this. He's not saying that. He's saying that this particular kind of being related to others, it just brings ruin to everyone. So renounce that. That's what he is saying. Then secondly, in case it's not obvious, he's not saying you should do. He is not prescribing you to go around seeing how all your relationships are like this. He's not saying that. He's saying with regards to the company of such childish people. So verse 15, he says, then in fact, if you see that whoever it is that you're relating to, connected to, falls under this kind of mutually destructive, and not even because somebody is up to no good. Here is not even talking about people who intentionally want to cause harm. He's just saying that there are situations where because of mutual ignorance, mutually childish, right? Then renounce that. Then he says, when you meet with these people, then, verse 15, greet them with smiles that keep on terms of common courtesy without inviting intimate connections. So this is a skillful way, not being two-faced, not being like hypocritical, but really understanding like when we get together, we get into these childish ways that bring about the ruin and the suffering of both you and me. So best we not do that. Then we can just stay on the common courtesy level.
然后在这一边就是千万不要就是误会几天菩萨在这边讲的，就不要把它读成我们所有的就是人际关系都是这样，而是这一边特指的是这一类，就当我们的人际关系里面有出现这样的一种状况的时候，就对彼此之间都没有任何利益的这样的一种关系，我们要去正视它，然后维持一个安全比较健康安全的一种互动，然后也不要去看到就是你所有的关系其实都是如此，反而是就是在15偈里面，我们就是像吉天菩萨会建议我们要远离凡愚，然后当会面的时候，我们就是维持一个非常和善的一种态度，但是不要太亲密，就是结下的是一种君子之间的这样的一种友谊。然后在这边谈的就是说，因为像上述所提到的这样的一种互动，其实它都是带来摧毁性，都是带来无意义的一种结果。这边还没有谈到那些有意要造成我们伤害的对象，其实是因为彼此之间，因为这样的一些对象，他们都是非常无名，然后所以还是非常幼稚的这样的一种状态。那比较善巧去互动的一种方式，其实就是维持一种就是君子之交。并不是说我们就非常的虚伪，而是我们应该辨别清楚，然后以更善巧的方式去回应。
16, it says, treat everyone like new acquaintances and keep yourself from close familiarity, right? So these two lines, you should then remember also the English, we have a saying in English, familiarity breeds contempt. So here is the opposite of that. So he's saying, so in a way, I mean, immediately when you read those two lines, at least the way it's translated into English, it might sound kind of cold, But here I think we can read it as, like with acquaintances, we are often, we don't take for granted, when we relate to acquaintances as well. We kept a friendly demeanor, but we don't get into like, I expect this, you expect that, all of that. Yeah, so here acquaintances doesn't have to mean. What is implied in close familiarity here is the kind of close familiarity that brings suffering for everyone. Then Here, acquaintances, new acquaintances, the word new there, new acquaintances, there's a freshness, You don't have expectations. You don't put burdens on each other. And this reading is consistent with the example given. He says, like bees who visit the flowers, they take the honey, they take the nectar to make honey without harming the flowers. That's crucial to understand. Yeah, because this verse 16 summarized the whole section about how we should relate to others. Like a bee that knows how to extract nectar from the flowers without harming the flowers. That is how we should relate with others in this world.
那在这一边就是第16偈，我们说，我们莫太亲密，然后善惜君子仪。那这个感觉上好像有点太冷酷，但其实这样的一种态度是避免我们就是会太过的把一切视作理所当然，把这样的一种友谊、这样的一种互动视为理所当然，就是不会有我对你这样好，然后我期待你也用同样的方式对我。然后在这一边就是非常亲密的这样的一种关系，这边所谈到的太亲密，就是其实为什么我们要避免这样的一种状态？因为它终究会对彼此带来苦。那反而我们是去建立一个更加新鲜、更加的清新的一种互动，不会造成彼此之间的一种负担。然后进而接下来在16季的这个例子就非常的吻合这样的一个描述，就是说我们要像这个蜜蜂采蜜的过程那样，然后就是不要去造成他人的伤害。
Yeah, so today we will stop here. An announcement about timing of our class starting from next Tuesday. This Saturday, everything is still the same. For next Tuesday onwards, those of you who are in Asia, nothing changes. For you, it's still going to be, if you're in Malaysia and Singapore, 9 to 11 p.m. Okay? So Asia, don't worry about it. But for those of us in the West, in the Americas, we will change our meeting time to 1 hour earlier. So New York time, it will be 8 to 10 instead of 9 to 11. Then the rest of you in different time zones, Google, New York time, 8 a.m., local time, ? That's how you should ask Google.
然后我们现在就讲到这里，然后就有一个调整，就是下个星期二开始，然后如果是在西方的话，这个课程会挪1个小时，提前1个小时，那就是8点到10点。
Many, but not all countries in the Americas do this, and in Europe too, do this daylight savings business. 1 hour faster, 1 hour slower. So in the fall, we fall back an hour. Anyway, starting from next Tuesday, we will start at 8 New York time. But again, in Asia, don't worry about it. Your time is same. Don't get confused. Changju Semcho Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Yu Chi Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Pa Yang Go Ne Gong Du Pel War Shou. I got the keys to the new urban Dharma space yesterday, and so lots of work, lots of excitement coming up. We'll give you updates from time to time, and then also appeals for help for us to make this move smoothly, and soon we'll have a brand new nice space.
然后就是刚刚分享到新
Bye bye.
新道场的一些细节。
Gracias.
Bye bye.
Gracias.
Congratulations.
Bye bye.
Bye. Good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Gracias, Dr. Lee.
Gracias.